Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Here's a tale of corporate absurdity where timesheets become the battleground for accuracy, client billing, and sheer frustration. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. My timesheets aren't accurate enough? All right, then. Timesheets have become a battle at work in our relatively small but growing company. To wit, our timesheets serve two masters. On the one hand, they provide important information on where all of our efforts are going and who's being overworked. On the other, they form the basis of our billing to our clients. I'm a technical PM who occasionally jumps in to do admin work on a Salesforce database when our solutions architects and BAs are too busy. I'm rusty and I don't feel clients should have to pay me for having to remember how to do something or search something, do a write-up, and run it by an essay before implementing in our sandboxes. I suggest something similar to our admin trainees. Because they're learning, I tell them to bill half the time they worked on deliverables to our client and half to a training budget while they get their bearings so the client isn't being billed for learning time. New management feels that as a result, our timesheets are inaccurate. Consequently, they now review my timesheets on a weekly basis, despite the fact that I only do it to save clients money. Fair enough, I suppose, except that a few clients have essentially signed separate work orders for major overhauls to the system with a budget associated with each. Easy if you're doing the actual work, as our BAs and SAs do. Problem is, our time tracking system has 0 tasks associated with overhead, and a lot of what I do is scrape the system to create documentation, internal and external, keep track of overall schedule, and keep as much unnecessary paperwork away from our SA and BA as possible. In other words, overhead. I've asked for tasks associated with overhead to be included and/or better guidance on what to do if I don't feel a client should be billed for work for one reason or another. A number of people have shared my concern. We've got nothing of the sort, and I continue to have timesheet reviews. The most guidance I got was write detailed notes and we can figure it out afterwards. Well, okay then. Timesheets now get updated every hour. Clients with tons of tasks and subtasks and no overhead get a completely unique ad hoc solutions on how the time is notated. The notes section of each item provides a detailed explanation of why I entered the amount of time that I did for the particular task, including whether or not it was an arbitrary division. The notes are quite detailed. If it ever takes me at least 10 minutes to type up my explanations, I throw in a 15-minute log time for explaining how my time was supposed to work and why I billed my work where I did, which gets charged to HR tasks. I also give them a 15-minute charge every day for making and remaking coffee and a generic 15-minute charge for bathroom breaks, both clearly labeled as such. Having recently been told that level of detail was gratuitous and unnecessary, I simply informed them that the guidance I was given was to write detailed notes, and until I have a way of denoting overhead in a consistent fashion that does not arbitrarily hit fixed funds for deliverables the clients expect, I will do what I was told was best practice. Our reviews have gotten quite boring as I assure my supervisors that everything I have to say is on the timesheet, and I have nothing further to add. Edit. Quick clarification, because a lot of people are especially concerned about unnamed company's revenue stream. Billing some of my time to training or something to that effect, while debatable in my views, not the major issue. The point is there's no overhead task associated with client work, and that's a lot of what I do. I was audited for inconsistencies regarding the training code, explained the issue, but pointed out that without an overhead task associated with clients, I'm either arbitrarily charging random tasks for specific agreements, or I'm burying that potential revenue in internal overhead anyways. That issue's not been fixed, and I continue to be audited. I'm not going to keep finding loosely associated tasks to stuff my time into and then sit there at a meeting justifying why I arbitrarily cut up my time the way I did. It's in my absurdly detailed notes, which I wouldn't need if I just had an overhead task for a client. You want to take those hours and bill them? Be my guest. Don't. Eat the cost to remain competitive. I have no dog in that fight. but either give me the tools to accurately represent my time or don't complain about my fiction. OP, you've taken their vague, unhelpful instructions and turned it into a beautiful, bureaucratic nightmare. They wanted detailed notes? Well, now they're getting hourly breakdowns of coffee making and bathroom trips, along with a dissertation on why you charge time the way you did. Honestly, it's hilarious that their insistence on micromanaging your timesheets has backfired so gloriously. And our second story. Flying economy for business? How one trip proved a policy change was a disaster. My company used me to comply with another company's travel requirements to demonstrate they're wrong. I work for a British company in telecoms, and we won a bid for a Mexican contract. Besides the product itself, it meant they'd need pre- and post-sale support in order to realize the real benefits and integrate seamlessly. For me, that meant regular trips from the UK to Mexico, flying out Sunday, working 16-plus hours Monday to Thursday, returning Friday. It was intense, hard work, but fulfilling. The first 3 of these trips went seamlessly, but before the 4th, the company changed travel policy, stipulated economy class flights, and took a day off the trips. They were told this would be counterproductive, but didn't want to hear it. We complied. I flew cattle. On the way out, I didn't have space to open the laptop, so I couldn't work. I also couldn't get comfortable enough to sleep, so I arrived unprepared, tired, and jet-lagged. Travel fatigue and jet lag meant I wasn't properly functional until Wednesday, so they effectively lost my productivity for 2 days on top of the flight hours. The economy ticket wasn't adjustable without a whopping fee, so they didn't change the return flight back to Friday. The company saved $5,000 on fees, flights, and hotels, but got 1 day of work instead of 5. The policy was scrapped after that visit. Bean counters only count beans. They don't pay attention to why certain beans go into certain jars on certain days and why they go on different shelves. They only care about how many there are. This is why they should never be in charge of any policies, only report how many and where they're at. And our last story. Entitled neighbors treat my driveway like a public road until legal action looms. The situation with my neighbors has gone from annoying to outright infuriating. Despite repeated warnings and clear indications that my driveway is private property, my adult neighbors seem to think it's a public thoroughfare. They've been driving their cars through my driveway to make shortcuts, turnarounds, and even park temporarily when it suits them. This isn't a minor inconvenience, it's disruptive, unsafe, and a complete disregard for boundaries. Just the other night, as I was pulling into my driveway, one of them sped in from the other side, nearly causing an accident. If I hadn't braked in time, it could have been a disaster. We initially tried to be patient. I spoke directly to the neighbors multiple times, explaining that the driveway is private property and they need to stop using it. They all brushed it off as though I was the one being unreasonable. We're just turning around, or it's not a big deal, were the typical responses. One neighbor even had the audacity to say, "You weren't even using it when I pulled in." To make matters worse, it's not just a one-off thing, it's happening daily. The cars coming in and out disturb my family, scare my pets, and make us constantly feel like we're being intruded upon. It's especially alarming at night when headlights suddenly flash into our windows and the noise of engines revving as they pull out. Hoping to resolve the issue peacefully, we put up a large private driveway sign to make it crystal clear. But the sign mysteriously disappeared within a week. My security camera didn't catch the exact moment it was removed, but the neighbor across the street was seen loitering near it suspiciously. When I confronted them, they played dumb, saying, "Oh, I didn't notice any sign." Frustrated, we decided to take it a step further. We had the property surveyed, clearly marking the boundaries with stakes, and began getting estimates from fencing companies. The plan was to install a sturdy fence along the property line to put an end to this nonsense once and for all. You'd think the survey stakes would be a deterrent, but no, they're still driving through. One neighbor even had the gall to move a stake out of the way so they could squeeze past. At this point, it's less about convenience and more about outright disrespect. I've spoken to them directly more times than I can count, and it's always the same excuses. "It's just for a second," or "I've been doing this for years. What's the problem now?" One even told me, "Your father used to let us do this," referencing when my dad owned the property. but I've made it abundantly clear that those days are over and the driveway is off limits. The worst is the neighbor across the street who seems to be the ringleader of this entitlement circus. When I told him to stay off my property, he got defensive and started yelling. "You're making a big deal out of nothing. It's just a driveway," he shouted as though he had any rights to dictate what I do with my property. I've also spoken to his wife, who initially seemed understanding, but it's clear she's not enforcing anything. She gave me the whole "I'll talk to him" routine, but the very next day his car was back in my driveway. After months of dealing with this, I went to the local township police to ask what my options are. Their response: "This is a civil matter. You'll need to send a certified letter to establish clear boundaries before we can intervene." Essentially, they won't step in unless the trespassing continues after formal notice has been given. Our attorney's already drafted the letter. It outlines the property boundaries, the repeated trespassing, and the liability risks. It also makes it clear that further violations will result in legal action. We haven't sent it yet because we're hesitant to escalate the situation, but at this point it feels inevitable. We've also moved forward with plans to install a fence. The materials are on order, and once it's up, there'll be no way for them to access the driveway. However, I wouldn't be surprised if they try to damage the fence or find another way to encroach. I know sending the attorney's letter will likely trigger retaliation. The neighbor across the street has a history of being combative, and I wouldn't put it past him to escalate the situation further. We've already installed additional security cameras to cover every angle of the driveway and property, so at least we'll have evidence if things get worse. The whole situation's gone from a minor annoyance to a constant source of stress. I just want to feel secure in my own home without worrying about entitled neighbors treating my property like their personal driveway. If the letter and the fence don't work, I'm prepared to take them to court. At this point, it's not just about the driveway, it's about standing up to their complete disregard for boundaries and common decency. Your neighbors are practically auditioning for the role of worst neighbors ever. The fact that they've ignored your polite conversations, destroyed your signage, and blatantly disrespected your property is infuriating. And the "it's just a driveway" excuse? No, it's your driveway, not a public road or their personal shortcut. The steps you've taken, surveying, planning the fence, and installing cameras, are on spot. The certified letter's a necessary move at this point, even if it might escalate things. You've been more than patient, and now it's time to lay down the law, literally. If they retaliate, you'll have the evidence to back up any legal action, which you're clearly prepared to take. Honestly, the audacity of these neighbors is unreal. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.